Hello, I'm going to talk about the standards of Spanish as a foreign language in the American International School of Jeddah. At my school, we work with the ACTFL standards, the American Council of Teaching Foreign Language Standards, which are basically 5 main areas or goals: communication, culture, connections, comparison, and communities. Each standard has its own small standard, so I'm gonna work with 3 of them. I'm going to work with high school students, 9th grade, Spanish 3. I chose this group, specific group, because they already know the language and they make connections better than other groups of Spanish learners, and also because at this level they're very interested in learn the culture. It's an elective course, so all my students go to my Spanish class because they're willing to learn and to know more about Spanish and the Latin American culture. I'm going to talk about, or I want to develop 3 different standards. Culture. The main goal is to interact with cultural competence and understanding. This goal or standard is divided into different standards. One that focuses on the practice and the perspective of the culture, and the other one with the product and the perspective of the culture, the studied culture. They look alike, but the difference is that one just looks about the practice, the other, as I said, on the product. Connections. The main goal is to connect with other disciplines and acquire information and diverse perspective in order to use the language to function in academic and career-related situations. This is also divided into different standards or smaller standards, okay? By making connections, they pretend that the learners build, reinforce, and expand their knowledge of other disciplines while using the language to develop critical thinking and to solve problems creatively. The second, the small standard, is acquire information and diverse perspective. For this, learners access and evaluate information and diverse perspective that are available through the language and its culture. Comparison. Develop insight into the nature of language and culture in order to interact with cultural competences. This is also divided into different standards or smaller standards, where they expect that the learners use the language to investigate, explain, and reflect on the nature of the language through comparison of the language studied and their own. Cultural comparisons, where learners use the language to investigate, explain, and reflect on the concept of culture through comparison of the culture studied and their own. So what they're going to do. The activity, since they have to learn about the countries that speak Spanish, and they're quite few, they're quite a lot, I'm going to let them choose one of those countries. Well, this is something I usually do. They can choose whatever they want, whatever country they want. They have to create a PowerPoint or a video where they have to talk about the most important information about the country they choose, flag, population, food, like different traditions, religion, things that are interesting for them, cultural things. So the idea is that they could learn as much as possible about this country. All the information they get, they will put in this PowerPoint or video, and they will present it to the class. And the idea is to make it as creative as possible. Also, they will have in the video or in the PowerPoint, they will have to compare and contrast two facts about that country they're learning about with their own country. And since sometimes my students, when they're doing presentations, their classmates sometimes are not interested in, students should create a Kahoot to assess their own classmates to see if they got their attention. The other activity they have to do is to create a poster or an infographic as if they were a tourism agency with the information about the country. So they will invite people to get to know this country they're learning about. So for these two different activities, my students or the students need to accomplish these standards. My students need these skills. First of all, they will need critical thinking to evaluate the information they found in the research, to articulate the findings, to be open to new ideas, cultures, and values, because sometimes the places they find or what they found might be very different from theirs. So they have to understand the differences and respect them. Creativity, to present an interesting work and to think about outside the box, because although I ask for a PowerPoint, I'm always open to different ideas. I'm not just asking them to do just a PowerPoint or a video. If they can show me something interesting that will be part, or we will like take all the aspects I'm looking for me, it's good. The other thing that the skills my students will need to have is communication through the competency in written and oral language, because the PowerPoint, or well, if it's video, but if it's PowerPoint, they might write things, and oral language, because they will have to present it in Spanish. So they have to master what they're going to say in Spanish so they can have a good performance. To have sensitivity to the cultural differences, and to be aware of the rights and responsibilities of a global citizen, because it's important that students understand that if they're learning a new culture, if they're learning a new language, it's because they're part of the world, and that these places they're learning about are interesting places, that are places with good things and bad things, and they have to embrace this fact that they're different, that are sometimes completely strange for them, but they are as nice and interesting as their own culture. Also, they will have to use or to develop collaboration, because they will have to work in teams, and that means they have to interact effectively with others, have a good teamwork spirit and adaptability, because sometimes, although I prefer that they choose their work, that the people they're going to work with, sometimes if I had to choose, they have to get along. They have to try to work with the person, even if they don't know each other. The idea is to have a good final product. Okay, something that really like make me think about is that I never made the connection about the standards of the ACTLF and the 21st century skills, because I just I learned it, but I didn't make the connection. I make the connection during this exercise, because mostly what the ACTLF is asking are the same skills that the student of the 19th century will need. Communication, like a communicator, globally aware, self-directed learner, because they will have to make a research, be an innovator, information and media literate, because they will have to do research, collaborate, critical thinkers. So a lot of the things that my students will need to accomplish the goals of the ACTFL are the same of the 21st century learners. Okay, how will I assess this work? First of all, I have rubrics for my oral presentations. I try to make presentations in my classes, because that helps them to get have better vocabulary, do not be to leave behind they're scared about making mistakes. I usually tell them that I am also learner of English, and I do not speak perfect, but if I made mistakes, I want to try again, and I'm going to do it good. I'm going to grade the poster. I have rubrics for this kind of things, because I usually make them in class. So usually in my classes, we made oral presentations, posters, and obviously a quiz, which would be they will be for summative assessments. Normally when I have this type of presentations, I ask my students to give me like a previews of the presentation, and that's my formative assessment. So I could tell them if they're going in the right track, or if they need to organize a little bit, or change the subject, or maybe if they're not being respectful in the way they talk about something. So that would be my formative assessment. Make an oral before the oral presentation, they should give me a draft or something to share before the presentation is complete. The poster, I give them time to do it, so they usually they can do it at home, or they can do it in class, depending on my lesson plan. But if of the two options means that I'm gonna rate it with the rubric I have. And the quiz, well, it depends on the time. It could be it will be, my quizzes are